For starters, there were about 400 members at my home church. On a good Sunday, there were 20, yes 20, members in Jacob's church. However, of that 20, there was a good mix of children, young adults, and seniors. In fact, there were more young people than anything, because Zion was so small, it had a family feel, which was nice, but it still took some getting used to. If 5 people didn't show for worship, it was obvious. One of the children was Anita, Mary's 12-year-old daughter, who asked if I'd be her adopted godmother, as Buddy, my husband, was already her unofficial godfather. She and I became close. She attached herself to me like I was her new body. She adored me and usually sat beside me in church. The building was a converted 2-story home. The sanctuary, kitchen, and bathroom were on the first floor, and the pastor's study, 2 classrooms, and another bathroom was on the second floor. Another church that had about 50 members shared the building, though Jacob's church held the least. The other church's services started at 8 o'clock, and we started at 10:30 a.m. It seemed to work harmoniously. We get out of church so early that on occasion I would go to my home church, and my pastor would still be preaching. I would be able to have a different and exhilarating experience, refreshing. There's no place like home. Usually after church, Jacob would meet with the trustees and deacons to count money and get things in order for tithes rent. We had a favorite restaurant that we frequented, or sometimes we had whatever he prepared for dinner. Notice I said he prepared. He was a much better cook than I was, so he prepared almost all of our meals. At my home church, as well as at Zion, there's a time to greet one another. This was the only time I would get to feel my husband's touch. Though brief and usually cold, it was still a touch. Therefore, once a week, I had the privilege to feel him. Though we shared the same home and bed, we hardly ever cuddled or touched. We didn't even hold hands or scratch the other's back. I recall that at one time during the first 3 to 6 months of our union, that we went at least 2 months without sex. What in God's name have I gotten myself into? I will take any of your questions at this time. Don't be afraid, you can ask anything.
Was he?
Yes,
but how can you just stand up there and read without, how does it feel to stand there and read this?
yes, I'm sorry. The question is, how can I stand here and read that? How do I feel about reading that? When I read the book, of course writing the book is different than reading the book. So I actually didn't read the book until once it was completely bound. And I received a copy and I read it, from front to back in one evening. And I was reminded, and I could hear his voice, and I could see his expressions, and I could almost feel the feelings that I felt when it was happening, but it made me chuckle. So how do I feel? It was sad, it was horrible, it was a terrible experience, but at the same time, I'm blessed in spite of it. And I don't hold a grudge against him. I mean, God gives us what we need when we need it, and it was only because of him that I am able to not just stand here before you today, but to be in sound mind. And I'm just grateful that I made it so that I could share with you and be a blessing to you. Yes.
I wanted to ask you, because, I was coming to church when, you was getting with your husband, and I don't know if everybody else, I just thought you guys were the perfect couple. You look good together, and I just, I wanted to ask you, were there any signs before you entered into this marriage? Because looking on the outside, you guys look like you were happy. You look like you were so happy. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people always say that whether it's a women's intuition, little hairs on the back of your neck, there's always